In today's episode, we're diving into the transformative power of change and transition with Bill Kruse, founder of HKA and Associates, CPAs and Advisors, and author of an upcoming skinny book all about navigating life's pivotal moments. Bill shares his journey from a farm upbringing to becoming a successful CPA and business owner, and reflecting on how unexpected changes shaped his path and inspired his work. Together, we explore how embracing change, giving yourself permission to evolve, and building accountability into your life can lead to profound personal and professional growth. With insights into planned and unplanned transitions, the importance of investing in yourself and in your business, and the mindset needed to turn challenges into opportunities, this conversation is a goldmine for anyone facing change. Join us as Bill inspires us to lean into transitions with courage, preparedness, and maybe even a little fun. Let's get started. I'm your host, Katherine Jelinek, and this is the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform, the place for entrepreneurs with something to share and who want to be heard. Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here today with Bill Kruse, founder and managing partner of HKA and Associates, CPAs and Advisors, author of soon-to-be-released book that is all about change and transition. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you, Catherine. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. So the opening question that I like to ask of guests is, in your childhood, when was the first time that you felt the inner spark of what you desired to bring, do, or be in the world?
So that's a really good question, but I'm blessed to have been born and raised on a farm. So every day, there's the Frodo Baggins that's in the book where he talks about as soon as you walk outside, the great adventure starts. And that's was really my whole childhood. Every day, as soon as you got up in the morning, the great adventure started, whether it was feeding the sows or feeding the bulls or breaking ice. Whatever you were doing, the adventure started. And then you had the afternoon to just go play in the ditch with army people, so you just never knew what was happening. And I think that's bred a lot from being outside, right? And embracing everything that's going on around you. So I think once I started actually then working with my dad, my dad always said, the kids are at the right age when they can keep up with me walking across the field. And that was true. I mean, now he can do something with you. He's 6'4" guy, big high mobility guy. And so once you're able to keep up with dad, he puts you to work. And it was fun always finding a solution, sometimes a little mind boggling because your solution may not match with what your dad had in mind. But it was still fun to do that. And the real spark kicked really after I left the farm. Then it was like, there's a huge swath of young men and women who, in my opinion, were almost backing into business and how they were doing it. They had a passion about what they wanted to do, but nobody was really helping do what they want to do or format it or avoid the pitfall of not doing some things up front because you don't have money. And that's probably right in there. And by then I was 29, 30 years old. So I was probably a little late bloomer when it comes to that kind of thing.
But that's actually a perfect lead into some of this transition message that you have and change message, because you're a perfect example. You went through a huge change, given that you started your life thinking you were meant to be a farmer and you really had a passion for it. And then a huge change occurred in your life and a pivot. And at 30, 29, 30, where you really found now what's been your calling for the majority of your career. So talk to us about some of your personal transitions and changes before we get into your message about that.
Well, and I think the first thing is that change happens every day. Something is changing every day. Some of them are imperceptible, but it is causing you to react and do something different. And so change is what happens all around you. Transition is when you acknowledge something and change the way you do stuff. So that's transition. And I think that's very important. For me, getting out of high school, going to college, coming back from the farm, knowing that this was what God called me to do. I was the best at this thing. My kids call me the horse whisperer. I'm good with animals. All these things that I do well. And then you wake up one day and you have a conversation with your father, and he says, "Well, you're not doing it for me anymore." And so now what you have to do is recognize that change has been occurring. Maybe I missed it. Maybe I missed it along the way. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that you did. And now something has to happen. Well, when you react, which is what my wife and I had to do, we had Catherine, and she was pregnant with Lauren, and we were leaving the farm. Now we have to transition into a new role. A lot of people call it the next chapter, right? And it's a little bit different than a chapter, because a lot of times we write a chapter and we know what we're getting ready to say and it unfolds in front of us. Here, transition as a result of change is because something has been thrust upon you and you got to move. And I think that's a little bit of the difference. And that was the first one. Of course, not until I get older do I recognize all the good that comes from those hiccups in your life. And Bishop Robert Barron says God allows bad things to happen because of the good that he knows, we don't know, that he knows will come from it. And I think that my life has been about that. God's
Yeah.
allowed some bad things to happen here and there, and he's allowed me to react in a way that's been positive and just a blessing for me and hopefully for the people around me. So I think that's the critical thing. Rocky Balboa movie says everybody's going to get knocked down. It's whether or not you get up. And I think that's really important with this book. And it's about, you've been knocked down, let's go get up. Or you may get knocked down, be ready to get up. And I think that's become the genesis of my life.
There's so much there. But one thing is just really you're calling people to we all have these things occur, surprises. Some of the changes are planned, and I'd love to hear. Another question will be, so this is a great example you've had of one that was thrust upon you, like you said. And what you did though was, how can you raise the moment in front of you by how you step into this? Like you said, what good can come of this, and what's meant to be here. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
reframing.
Yeah.
But sometimes the changes and transitions, and I loved that your definition of transition is this change is happening and now I'm going to reposition myself. I'm rewording it poorly, but that idea that I'm going to decide to shift into this with the change that's occurring. But what about the ones that are planned? What about a planned one in your life? Talk
Yeah.
about some
So
of
I
the other
think
transitions.
the biggest, I had two big planned ones in my life. Um, Once I left the farm, of course, that had to be planned because I was 29, going on 30, back in the day when 30-year-olds didn't start over, right? You worked with a company for the rest of your life. By the time you were 30, dude, you were there. You're too old to change. And so that had to be a very thought provoking thought about, well, what are my skill sets that would suggest I may be good at something else? Because frankly, I had no idea what I could do. I've been farming my whole life. I knew what I liked. So now I had to go reinvent what that is. And the great thing there was that what you learn from that is, and that's where I come up in the book, there are things that I have, there are things that I need. You don't know about shoulds, and we'll get in that in the book, but shoulds are things that you should have done. People talk about that all the time. Should have done. Well, if you should have done it, it was something you needed, right? And so shoulds become things that you needed but decided to replace with something that you're either too lazy or didn't know you needed at the time. Okay. So here it is. I'm 29. We've got one wonderful child. We're getting ready to have another one. What do we do next? So I pull out, what color is my rainbow? That's an old book. What color is my parachute is the name of it. Sorry. And you just start doing it. So now you got to do the work. With every great transition is work, real work. Some of us are lucky enough we back into it, right? It just happens around us. Well, that's wonderful. But a lot of time, real transition that we remember is something we have to go do some work on. So we had to do some work about what were we going to do next? What money did we have? What money did not have? How do we get along? We've got a family, that kind of stuff. And from there, develop I have the skill set to be an accountant. I have the personality to do it. Yeah, all jokes aside about accountants and attorneys and their personalities or lack thereof. So you're sitting there and you got all that stuff, and now you got to go put it in motion. Well, the great thing was I had a wife that was very supportive, and she, of course, wanted to make sure that, we had food on the table. So being supportive of that, and then deciding, well, one of the needs is I have to have cash flow coming in. Well, that means I have to get a job, which means I have to have the right university in order for me to enroll. See, all that stuff starts coming together. That's the work. That's the sweaty start of getting the work done in your transition process. When I think of another great transition in my life was when I turned, I think I was 52 or 53, and realized that the public accountants that I was running into that were thinking about selling their firms, they're 70, 71, 72 years old. They've lost their best clients because they're starting to scale back. They may not even know it. And so introspectively, I thought, well, is that where I want to be? I love my clients. Do I want to sell to the next firm? No, I really don't. Well, what should I do then? Then I have to swallow the ego pill and start bringing in talented young people to replace me, not do what I do, replace me. And that means execute on a daily basis in their own way, not in my
Mhm.
way, in their way. That was the ego hit, right? Because trust me, I walk into a room, I know I'm the smartest person in the room. It just is, right? I'm sorry, right? So understanding that really you're not, and there's a lot of different ways to accomplish the same goal, as long as it's at a high level of quality, you know, learning that ego take has proven very good. Now we're in the middle of a transition. I have three wonderful young partners that are going to be buying me out as I step into a new role, and it's very exciting for everybody, right? Not just me. So a lot of pain there, a lot of transition, and that was work. That was real work. Finding the talent, understanding where your goal is. One of the things that you have to remember when you start transitioning, you're looking into a crystal ball, and some people will say, "Well, I can't read the future." No, you can't, but you better get close because everything you do next is going to drive you towards that piece. And if I need these things to get to that piece, and I move upstream or downstream a little, the needs changed. And if I'm loading for, think about back in the day. I mean, can you imagine going west on a wagon? I need to put everything I need for the next 12 months in that wagon. What do you need? I have no idea. But you got to start, you got to guess. And so that's very important with transition is being ready for it. And it's there's a little bit of a muscle memory where you accept as soon as you recognize that the change that's occurring means you need to change. That's transition. Okay. As soon as that happens, your muscle memory is immediately going to say, what's the new goal then? What's the new service protocol? Whatever that is, what do I have that works for it? And what do I need to upgrade or bring in additional services that I don't have, right? Needs, haves. And then once you do that, you just and then what happens is that's just kind of the way business is. Hey, we're not doing a lot of paper tax returns anymore. We're going to do a lot of electronic returns. Okay, well, what's that mean? It means we need a different kind of a software platform, so that I have all these electronic things. I don't need paper anymore. You see, just changing constantly, tweaking with your transition, and great business. Kaizen. That's a Japanese term that came in the late '90s. Kaizen was a process of continuous improvement. And that's the same kind of transition that needs to happen in your business. Does that kind of make sense?
It does. It does. So when were able to have those conversations and know that you wanted to be able to sell your business to a few new partners, younger partners to take over eventually from you, what were those major steps? I mean, were these people already a part of your team, or did you have to recruit some of them?
No, they weren't a part of the team. What you had to do was there was a stretch where, I wasn't a great employer. I was a great firer because I was looking for a certain type of individual. They had to be able to speak. They had to be able to talk on demand. You had to be able to be convincing that you knew what you were doing, even though you still needed to check it out. So, because small businessmen and women, they don't want an answer in a couple of weeks. They may need your best guess right now, and so formulating in your brain how to do that. So there was a great period of trial and error. I already had an idea of the person that I needed because once again, you step back and introspectively, and I don't mean this in an egotistical level. I was being successful. We had a successful firm. What made us successful? Okay. If that's what makes us successful and I am replaced, then what is the new need? Okay. If the firm grows, we started originally as the firm, it can only grow so much. That was the first transition. The firm can only grow so much. My bandwidth is only so much. What am I willing to do differently to allow someone else to do what I'm doing now? Because I know what I'm doing now. I already know what I'm doing now, right? I can put it on a piece of paper. So that's your first part. What's my SOP? Now I have my SOP. Now I need somebody to fulfill that SOP, which allows me to create a new one. And that's what we did.
An
We
SOP,
found
standard operating process, right?
standard, yeah. What is my standard operating procedure for
Procedure.
doing what I do, right? And that's what we did originally. Was the first big transition. Once I recognized that in order to meet financial goals, lifestyle goals, all that stuff, I had to replace myself constantly so that then my good clients, and I have a lot of great clients, lifelong friends, that we've been doing business with. I don't want to turn them over to the next dude, right? I want to turn them over to the people they know. And that was the goal. How do you have that smooth? Ted Jones and his wife, Pat, they founded Edward Jones. He started out, so his dad started the company a long time ago. Then Ted came in. Ted legitimately gave away the firm before he died. And in doing so, created an engine that has had tens of thousands of very, very happy people that are in a better place than they would have been had he not done that. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I was that nice, but I did feel as though along the way, I legitimately had to come lower so that someone else could step up, right? And so what that meant was, once again, the ego piece comes in. And what I would do is, this is what I'm doing. So you go do what I'm doing, and then I'm going to go do something new. And it was a stair step. You hear the Great Pacific Plan, World War II was the island hopping. Well, in a lot of different ways, that's what we did. We did island hopping. Well, the first thing Bill Kruse did was he implemented technology into the tax return deal. Then he created a tax return process. Then he created a communication protocol. Then he started looking at the tax returns a little bit different. Replacing yourself at each one of those steps is kind of an island hopping, so to speak, into creating whatever it is that allows someone to go in and do that. Now I go over here and I do something else. So we're going to do 1040 multi-state taxes. Then we're going to go do all the small business taxes. Then we're going to start doing estate planning. Then we're going to start acquisition planning or sales planning. Each one of those is a new something, and now bringing in skill sets that replace me. And so transition can be big transition. Okay, Bill, you're not going to have a job anymore. You and your dad aren't going to farm together. What are you going to do next? That's pretty big. It can be minor transitions based upon your overall business plan. Now, what happens along the way? COVID hits. Well, what's that mean? It means you got to send your whole firm home. Well, but we still got to get work done because the IRS didn't say, hey, by the way, nobody has to file a tax return for the next 2 years. They didn't say that. And so now what do we do? Well, I need to go borrow money to fund home offices for my teammates. Okay. And so that they could have an environment that makes them productive, right? And it's not just about going at home, and you can tell that I'm sitting at home now. It's about going at home and being effective, being present, having the right computer, having the computer you want. We all want different things. I'm a Mac guy. Some people are not, and so that's your next big one. Those are the kind of transitions that happen because of change that you have to do immediately that you didn't plan. So you have planned, you have unplanned. Once you get used to changing, guess what? The next one is so easy. It takes no time. You've heard people talk about, well, they're big old bureaucracy. Bill Kruse's firm's small and nimble. Yeah, that's because Bill Kruse changes constantly. Change happens to me, so I'm constantly in transition mode. Does that make sense? So it allows us to just keep moving and changing, and that's why we're nimble, because we move and change.
I appreciate that. How did you get yourself used to changing, though? Like, what is the big aha there? Because it's happening to all humans everywhere all the time, change. And not all of us are like good at it.
Yeah. So full disclosure, first of all, I am good at change in a business perspective. I'm not necessarily good at change everywhere. My wife loves to tell the story. She did a special fleur-de-lis paint job on the top of our bedroom. I loved it. And then she decided she wanted to change it like 3 or 4 years. I'm like, yeah, no, you're not doing that. I like my bedroom. She's like, yeah, but you'll like the new one. I'm like, yeah, no, I won't like it. So change isn't good. We're not all there. But from a business perspective, the part that I embrace is the excitement and the newness that change can bring. Now, you just had a root canal this morning. Guess what? The rest of the day is going to be better. You're on an upswing now. You've had the worst thing possible that you could have this morning. Now you're on an upswing. That's the way I think that helped me a lot. And so what I found with all business change is the excitement about bringing in, God has blessed us with a lot of things, but really the biggest blessing he's given us is people that change us every day a little bit, one way or the other. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it makes us the person we become. And if we put smiles on the faces of people, then the trials and tribulations is outweighed, right? So that change was something I embraced probably not until, so I started out of college, went back to college, left college, went to work for KPMG. My wife got sick, so we moved to St. Louis, out of the blue. Transitioned to Ernst and Young. That was the first time that I really started hitting into we can have fun with this, right? And then you just start embracing it. When the house flooded in January, we had to redo the whole thing. Insurance isn't paying for all of it. I said, no worries, it's going to be so much better. Think about what we're going to do next. And so now we have this really cool thing that we could have got drowned in the details of, oh, woe is me, insurance isn't paying for it. Okay, well, let's make the best of what we can. And I think that's what enthuses me in business, because small business is changing around me right now. AI is coming into my world with both feet. How do I impact that? How do I embrace that and then use it to good? Now, that means you're probably not going to sleep as much as you were, as you go through those ebbs and flows, but it can be invigorating at the same time. It's kind of like you were talking about your young children. I mean, they keep you alive, right? Well, in the business, if you embrace that same kind of change, I've got young children around me all the time. Something new is going to happen, and that makes it easier to go have some fun.
Yes.
And there's a difference, joy and happiness, right? The fun I have in my life and my business is joy. Even in a bad day, it's good. It's not fleeting. It's still good because there's a vision going out there forward. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Your way of being able to reframe and shift your perspectives around change, which you might not even have to shift anymore because you're naturally, in a disposition to see change as positive, which is amazing. But to be able to see it as an adventure. I loved what you said at the very beginning about Frodo Baggins. Every day you walk out your door, it's a new adventure. But that's what you're saying. And especially in business, having gotten yourself used to that every new thing, new challenge coming up is a chance to, wow, how can we make this better? The basement flooded. How can we make this better?
Yeah.
What a great way to be.
There is a Latin phrase, and I don't remember it right now, but it basically says, what good is a man who does not make things better? And I think, man is a euphemism for all of mankind. Everything you touch, how do you do better than what was done? And you have to be careful with that, right? Because especially today, if I touch something, I want to make it better. I have to be careful with the people who already made this really good, and respect that. And I think that's very important. So I don't want to glom over that. But I do think that's part of recognizing change. How do I transition? How do I make that? Well, I'd already transitioned once. How'd that go? Well, it went okay. We got it done. But what do we need to do better now? So there's so much going on there that allows you to really get the meat out of it.
Well, real quick on that, though, is the people who were before you, you're doing a great job at being that person now, I'm seeing. You're preparing a transition for those to come in and take over your business. And you're opening up and giving them the space to be themselves, to be different than you. And so I feel like that's an invitation from you being the one who went before, but you're making space for the new ideas and the new energy. And that's a really cool example to see. And I feel like something important to highlight.
Well,
And
you
how
really
do
have
we,
to. Yeah, just think about that. I mean, Bill Kruse does it his way. Well, it is my unique way.
Mhm.
He blessed me with these characteristics. Jordan, Catherine, Blake, Dakota, they do it differently. Nick, they do it differently, but guess what? They do the same thing. In our business, our job is to serve the client. Our job is to find options and then let the client make the options that fit best for him. And hopefully we do it without prejudice. Sometimes we don't. We have prejudice, and I'm just as guilty as anybody. But by opening yourself up that someone else may have or have be able to bring into that, once again, you're allowing you, who is a sponge, to be malleable enough to be able to react. The beauty of allowing other new people into your brain is that it allows you to continue to expand your brain. Does that make
Sure.
sense? So,
Yeah.
yes, there's an ego hit, but at
Hmm.
the same time, there's the excitement too. When you say, Catherine, that was a really good idea. I wish I'd have had it. I'm glad you did. I'm
Mm.
glad you did.
And is
I'm
that what
actually
you meant?
taking credit for letting her have the idea.
That's great.
So
When you're referring to prejudice, you were referring to the idea you've got your way of doing it
yes,
in your work.
absolutely.
Yes, your
Yes, absolutely.
disposition.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And a lot of times as we get older, it's harder to get over that. I liked
Yeah,
the way the
yeah,
room was painted. I
yeah.
love
Right.
the way it looks now,
Set in your
because
ways. Yeah.
that's exactly right. So yeah, absolutely.
So now we can move into your book content, and one of my favorite things about your book is just the permission to change. I feel like we've moved out of a generation that, like you even said in the beginning, where you came when you were 29, you had a job for 30 years. That was the way it was supposed to be. And there was a lot of unchangingness in prior generations. And now I think that some of our mindsets and some of the systems we have, even in business, are still reflective of that. We think we need to be the same business owner that we've been throughout the decades for the team and show up the same way. I love that your business or your book introduces the importance of permission, that people are allowed. It's okay for you to change, that your needs have changed, that your desires for your business and your role can change. Can you speak a little more to your
So
permission?
that's a very important thing when you think about it from a whole lot of different areas. First of all, you got to give yourself the permission to either acknowledge that you're wrong or acknowledge that you missed something. The acknowledgement really isn't about yesterday, so the devil lives in the past. The acknowledgement is about where am I right now and what needs to be done. And the permission to change is to allow the past to be let go so that you can move forward into what is probably a new path. I mean, it's really difficult for me to say, hey, change has happened around me. We need to transition, but we don't have to do anything different. I don't think definitionally those things change. So give yourself the permission to do it. Give other people the permission to question you, offer an alternative because they need that from you, I'm a big quote guy, but I remember one part in Yellowstone where John Dutton is saying something to Rip, I think, and Rip says, and John's like, "You of all people, please, for God's sakes, tell me what's going on." And he says, "You know why people don't is because they're afraid to let you down." People need permission, especially if you're in a position of power, as I am. I'm in a position of power. People need permission to allow me to give them permission. Now they have to accept it. They have to give themselves a permission to take my. So it's both sides, right? There's an acknowledgement there. Once you've done that, now you truly have. You're starting to open up the environment, and the environment can be very robust and fun. We make light of each other in our little business. That's okay. It's okay to look stupid once in a while. What is it they say? The one thing about failure is you learn more from failure than you do from success, because oftentimes in success, we don't stop and block and say, what did we do to make itself successful? Now, most of the new stuff is saying, stop ignoring success and just concentrating on your failures. Start looking at your successes. There's a book called With Winning in Mind that is all about Olympic marksmen, and they never look at their failures because muscle memory causes them to focus on what they did right. Because it's just like if you're driving down the road and there's a police officer on the side of the road and you look at him, you will steer into him. That's the way it works. Same thing. If I've missed the mark, and I concentrate on not missing the mark, I will overwhelm myself with not missing the mark, and I will miss the mark. So give yourself the permission to leave the past behind you, your failures behind you, and open yourself up to what you're stepping into, that new piece of life. Now, the reason it's not just about you, it's about your service providers too. Give them permission to leave yesterday behind. We mentioned a little bit in the book that when you're starting to really roll through that the business needs to change. I have something that I must do next. And it could be because of change, maybe because I changed. I'm going in a different direction. And maybe now I want to go do a different something. There's a lot of reasons for it. But you have to recognize that your service providers a lot of times are they're quite happy with the way things are. Thank you very much. Please don't change. You have to give them permission to either say, I don't want to go along with you, or you should have done this a long time ago. I've already got the plan mapped out for you. Could be one of both. It could just be a desire to hang in there. You don't know. But you've got to let people know it's okay to change with me. It's okay to discuss things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is tough. That's very tough, because two things happen. If somebody says something in an ill light towards me, that is going to change our relationship forever. There's no way it can't change our relationship forever. It may be good, it may be bad. It's up to the two of you. The two of you. It's up to me, the receiver of the information. It's up to that person, the giver of the information, to decide the path forward. I can ignore it, or I can acknowledge it and move forward in a positive position of strength. They can acknowledge or be a little meek and decide maybe they shouldn't have said that. It's already out the door, folks. Let's embrace it. If you think you overstepped your bounds, give yourself the permission and mea culpa it. If not, then ask if you need, hey, did that come off the way I wanted it to come off? Because I wanted it to come off constructive. Does that make sense? I think that's very important for both parties. It's not just about how I received it and that's going to dictate. No. Both of us now have to decide what's happened is going to change our relationship forever. What do we do with it?
Permission to enter into that space of negotiating, navigating it. Yeah.
You are.
Well, and
yeah.
I love that you're weaving in. Yes. Number one, I need to grant myself the permission to realize I want to be different in this business or in my life or whatever it is. But then also you're opening it up to have a space where that permission goes to the entire team, to the entire company, to how we're doing business. And this is a big foundational piece, in my opinion, for when I'm hearing you say that your business is flexible, you're open and adaptable to change. Having that permission a part of your culture is a big piece of being a flexible and adaptable business.
I think so. Yeah, it very is. I mean, there's a certain level of respect that comes with everything. You're kind of born with some respect. You walk into my door the front day, you're coming into my office. There's a level of respect there. What we do next is important. That openness, that permission to be honest, and not that fake honest, right? The real kind of stuff that's down in the dirt, wrestling back and forth, like two guys in the sandbox, right? And that kind of stuff, that what comes out of it is a healthy respect for each other and the ways things are, and that you can move forward with. We all need those calluses, right? And that's what permission does. It gives us a little bit of callus, so that, hey, look at the cook. We've all seen cooks. They pick up a hot frying pan, they move it over there. I can't do that. They've already got the calluses to do that. What I can do is allow someone to come in and tell me what I did was stupid and make me look stupid and recover from it in such a way that we explode with something positive, or we do something positive. That's the key. It may not be a complete change, but what it may do is thwart something else. There's a lot of different things that come from it, but those calluses are good to have. They're painful, but they're good to have. So once again, embrace it. Oh, guess what? Mess that up. What do I do next? How do I respond to this mess up in an authentic way that's good for everybody? I think that's important.
I love that. So let's move on to preparedness and the importance of being something you wrote, be prepared to take advantage of the opportunity. Just the fact that opportunities, you're positioning yourself for change, new opportunities are going to be coming up that align with your intention and how you want to move in the future. Now, it's that attitude of preparedness and how to set the business up, set yourself up to take advantage of the opportunities that might come. Speak to the preparedness value that you have.
Yeah. Another quote that I'm fond of is the lucky man, if he's prepared for it, luck will find him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Same thing. And it's really as part of the theme of the book, which is changes happen around me. If I build a platform that allows me to recognize that change is occurring and then transition my business ongoing, it also means that the change, which is the opportunity you mentioned, that opportunity presented itself. If my business is focused on transition and focused on capitalizing on the change going on around me, then I can capitalize on that change that's occurred in the business, which is, in essence, the opportunity. So opportunities happen. If we run a lean enterprise, and so, in the manufacturing environment, it's pretty much historical that if you run a manufacturing environment greater than 85% efficiency, you will fail. Because once you get over 85% efficiency, in order to get over that much in efficiency, now you're foregoing some maintenance. There's a little bit of quality issue. Once you get in the 90s and 95s, the equipment is moving at a speed it wasn't meant to move. It's going to wear out faster than your maintenance schedule at 85 does. All these things happen. And what happens more often than not is the whole factory floor comes to a stop. Okay. Now, you can run at 90, 95, 100, 110% efficiency for a period of time. But it's like everything else. You got to give it back. You got to run back to 80%. Okay. Well, our business is the same. The people business is the same way. You can only work so much overtime before you become numb to everything around you. You become numb to the process at hand and you make mistakes. And I equate that when I was on the farm during the planting season and the harvest season, we worked a lot. Okay. One of the things I loved about accounting, by the way, was when I decided accounting would be the way it was, I interviewed a friend of mine that had gone into accounting. He said, "You're going to love this." He said, "You only work 100 hours a week, like 4 or 5 times a year." I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So now today, thanks to the young people in my team, Catherine, especially, who's convinced me that if we plan to run a busy season where we never work more than 55 hours a week, we'll produce a better quality product. We'll keep our team happier. If I have a happy team, my clients are going to be happy, right? If my team is so overworked that they're numb to what's going on around them, yeah, the tax return may be right, but the things that we deliver, which make us different, that extra something, by the way, I noticed this time, is that something we should be aware of going forward? Just those little things. If you're so numb that you can't see those just because you're just trying to get it out the door, who am I really serving?
I love that. It's
Yeah.
very counterculture in a way, but the fact that uh, putting a standard out there to only work, maximum of 55 hours a week during your busiest season creates better work quality. I mean, I get that, but
Everything.
wow, how bold to do that
Yeah.
in your business.
Well, here's the thing, too. You also just self selected your team because you set a different standard.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
You did.
I'm a big fan of F3, which is a men's workout group we've talked about before, fitness fellowship and faith. You get up at 5:30 in the morning. If you're willing to go work out at 5:30 in the morning outside every day, you self-selected.
No
Well, by
kidding.
having that stringent a control, guess what? We're going to call our clients and say, remember when you said you'd have your stuff in on the 15th of February? This year, if it doesn't hit, then we will extend you. Well, why not? Why would you have to extend me? The due date's not till April 15th, because we have other important clients in front of us. And if you miss on your responsibility, you're forcing me to make a decision between my team, which, by the way, I make no money without, another good client who got their stuff in on time, or you. And it was your fault, not mine. So guess what? You're the odd man out. So you're putting all kinds of new things, which are what? They're opportunities. What are the opportunities for? Well, I can't get my stuff together. Let me help you get your stuff together. What can I do? How can I be a part of it? So it really opened us up to a brand new business opportunity to provide ongoing assistance. We're not a one and done group. We aren't. In fact, if you just want me to do your tax return, go to H&R Block. You want to be served? Hey, we're your team. We are your team. And now, okay, how do I get it there? Well, we need to help you close your books. We need to do this. We know what your cash flow is, all this stuff in advance. Okay. Well, that's opportunity to us, creating an opportunity for you to achieve your goals. And some people get myopic about that. I have to be done by the extended due date. Oh, not by the due date. Okay, great. Then this is what has to happen. By doing all those things, Catherine, we're creating an opportunity for everybody to excel. I can't tell you how many small businessmen and women, when they find out that they have to close their books and get it all together so that they can file maybe their S Corp return by March the 15th or something like that, suddenly find that the data they've been relying on isn't as good as it could have been, which allows them to better that data, giving themselves better impact, different inputs, more money. And that's just the way it works, right? There's the unintended consequence was, by holding ourselves to an accountability for our team, required us to hold our clients to an accountability, which allowed our clients to find a new avenue and make more money. And it doesn't always work that way, but it worked. This worked a lot more often than not. So, and allowed us to deepen relationships. We have great relationships with our clients. Why? Because they're great people. So anyway, does that make sense? I mean, you see where I'm saying?
It does make sense. Well, this is actually circling right back to what we were talking about with preparedness. You've set up a whole different system in order to adhere to a value that was promoted by your team. And it differentiates you now. And it's a part of being prepared and taking advantage of new opportunities. I love it. It's a great example of that. Let's move into the concept of investment. I loved it when you put that forth in the sit down interview for the book, and especially relating it back to like a house. Why do we only invest in our houses and, getting them back in shape before we're ready to sell? So talk about that in terms of a business and a person.
Well, I think that the investment you make in your business and in your team, frankly, is the most important. And oftentimes we forget that, especially small businessmen and women. Okay, so let's look at the average small businessman or woman. I went to breakfast this morning with a young group of attorneys, and they're just getting started. Now, I don't have two nickels to rub together, right? So I'm going to go a little bit on the cheap. Well, making the investment in your team and foregoing all that does, because an investment does what? A good investment does what? It returns. It has a return on your investment. So by making those investments in a good team allows me to provide a higher quality of service, and a higher quality of service means that I have more opportunities to serve the client more, which allows me to make more money on all the other stuff. So that investment in my team, in my business, in my technology will pay those dividends. And one of the unheralded things is, by creating your joie de vivre, hey, this is how Hawk Kruse and Associates run. All right, let's wrap it around a trademark. That's worth something in the marketplace then. I have to sell it, right, to have it, but it'll gives me a step up from a marketing perspective. Now I can say, well, this is the Hawk Kruse way, boom de boom, right? There it is. And not everybody has their way. We have our way. And making that investment and coming around to those types of investments, or then maybe everybody wants a Mac. Okay, well, that's a good investment, because people are going to enjoy working more as soon as they're sitting behind their Mac instead of, for me, I'm a Mac guy, but maybe they like DOS, whatever it is. Those are all good investments to make, because time is fleeting, and why not be happy as you go? Now, what people don't always realize is, when you invest in your business today, as though you were selling it in the future, not only do you get to realize the efforts of that investment, that upswinging net income line, but you're doing it now instead of later, just like the house, right? Why do we invest in our house when we're getting ready to sell it? So we put in a new bathroom. Great. The other guy gets the new bathroom. How does that make sense? It makes no sense, right? So if you invest in your business in such a way, here's what happens. Here's the way valuation works. Okay, here's the first thing. Well, I'm going to invest in my business, and that means I'm going to have a little bit of an EBITDA take back, or maybe my EBITDA grows, but I have less personal cash flow. Yeah, but my EBITDA grew. So what happens in the business world is, if I'm transitioning out of the business and I am in the EBITDA. Let's say I'm in down here in this EBITDA. Say it's $1,000, and that trades at 3 to 3.5, maybe 4 times EBITDA. And let's say I can get to 1,500, and that trades at 4, 4.5, 5. Well, look at all that extra wealth I put in my pocket, and I get to use the extra $500 of EBITDA every year. So investing in your business as though you're getting ready to sell it, running as though you're getting ready to sell it, doing all those things as you're getting ready to sell it. If you do it now, you have more money over your life, and you'll recognize a higher capital payout. So it all just makes a lot of sense to making that investment sooner than later, even though it's difficult, even though it may not be what you wanted. Maybe I wanted the big vacation this year or whatever. Well, and that's the other part of it, is that investment should be considered into the context of what your goals are, right? So if I make an investment today that isn't going to yield fruit for 3 years, and I'm transitioning out today, was it a great thing? Probably not a great investment, right? In my context, you never stop investing because you owe it to the people you leave behind and the clients you serve. So you're always making that next investment. So put in the new bathroom, for God's sakes. Turn on the hot water, and when your wife walks in and flushes the toilet, you don't freeze to death. Okay, just that kind of stuff, right? Let's go ahead and use that stuff now. And I just think from a business perspective, too often we don't. I'll give you another great example. A lot of small business young men and women, they start their business, they have no money, and their retirement plan is zero. So I met with the gentleman I met with today. I was like, well, what is your retirement plan? I'm going to sell the business. Dude, you're 40. I mean, come on. What do you mean you're going to sell the business? How about we have a real retirement plan, because now you are making money? And that's one of the things that we have to do. That's part of that investment. You've heard a ton of people, Warren Buffett's famous for saying, pay yourself first. So once you got the business up and running, everything needs to be re-looked at, making sure I have the right retirement plan. That's again, it's part of that investment. Trust me, it's worth it.
I love that. Let's weave into, and as we're getting closer to, the end of our time, just the role of accountability. Because okay, so you've given yourself permission, you've given permission to those around you, you're becoming more prepared, you're looking this change in the eyes, you're thinking about what you need to do to take advantage of the opportunity, investing in what you need to invest in. But then how about accountability? And how do we actually stay accountable to navigating the steps we need to take to becoming more prepared, to leaning into the opportunity?
So accountability has always been it will always be, it's been a big deal in my life. Maybe not because I did it, but because I've found the importance of it. Too often I've heard some people say, I'm going to hold myself accountable. Again, definitionally, doesn't work that way. Accountability, by definition, is someone else making you do what you said you'd do. That's the definition of accountability. The great thing about having accountability is what you'll find. Here's the first thing you'll find about accountability. All right, I set a deadline. Okay, so somebody sends me a bunch of stuff. As soon as we do it, I say, well, let's talk on this day. Why do I do that? I have a deadline. So that's an inherent accountability. On that day, I cannot say, by the way, I got your stuff when you promised it, and I decided not to work on it the way I said I would. Well, that's an internal accountability. From a small business growth perspective, now, especially once we get the vision, we've made the investment. First of all, most of us have other people in our lives that are depending on us. Okay. So why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing it for whatever reason. Hopefully you figured out what your why is. Go to the Simon Sinek website, TED Talk, do the why. Now I know why I'm doing it. I've got all these people that need me to perform. I have 25 teammates, 25 families need us to do the right thing. Okay. Especially Christmas, right? So now, what's the best way to do it? Have an accountability partner. That is the only way to do it. Okay. I'm 62. I'm going to tell you, had I done that back then, I'd be a lot farther along. I didn't. I said, well, I'm going to hold myself accountable. You can't hold yourself accountable. There's too many things coming at you. You need somebody outside of you to help you reformulate your daily priority risk, your daily priority list, so you can risk reward it. Okay. And that's the beauty of an accountability party. A lot of times, accountants become the accountability partner for small businessmen and women. Attorneys make great accountability partners. Bankers actually make pretty good ones. Um, your spouse can be a great accountability partner. Ego is a big deal there, so be careful with that. That's the first thing. Second thing to note is when you're sharing things with your spouse, you just got to be real careful. And I don't mean this in any way other than it's a fact. If you share too much, you may frighten your spouse. You may not need that right now.
Like what? What do you mean specifically?
Well,
Like I'm going to
if
sell the
you're
business, their lives are changing.
no, I think if your spouse truly knows how vulnerable you feel or how completely overwhelmed you are, that can bring in a level of fear. Because remember, your spouse, if you're the breadwinner, your spouse, they need you to perform too. Your kids need you to perform. And so you just got to be careful with the spouse part of it, okay? Because it's a very tricky relationship. It doesn't mean I don't share everything that's going on with my wife, but what it does mean is, when it's really black and really bleak, I'm probably not going to tell her the sky is falling. When the sky has actually started tripling down in front of us, I'm going, yeah, I think the sky's falling, honey. I'll tell her then, okay? But between now and then, I have to have my spouse doing what she does. In the context of my relationship with my spouse, she had to raise our kids, so she doesn't need all that stuff. She needs to know that I got this. And so I think it's an interesting play. I think you have to be careful with your spouse as an accountability partner. I think it's easier for a good friend in the gym, for your banker, for your attorney, especially. You have to figure out that relationship because somebody may charge you for it. Guess what? If they're going to charge you for it, it means what? Now you get to hold them accountable. Hey,
Sure.
wait a second.
Goes both
You're
ways.
charging me money. Can I get some good out of this? What do you think? Oh,
That's
no,
right.
you're perfect. Can I have another pancake? We're going out to eat or something like that. So I think that's a good thing. But I think accountability, it allows you to get professional with your goals, with your wants, with your needs. It allows you to give yourself permission to stop and focus on exactly what you're after because now somebody else is going to find out how you're doing.
Hmm.
That alone will almost ensure you accomplish that. Okay. What do they say? Amway used to say, you want a sailboat? Put it on your mailbox. Put it on your refrigerator. If you can visualize what it is you want and you see it every single day, you got like an 85% chance of reaching that goal. It's the same thing with an accountability partner. Choose someone who's going to take it serious enough to ask you how you got that goal and why you want to be held, of all the things to be held accountable, why this one? How important is it? Because you may be spending money on it, right? Well, that is going to require you to think through the steps necessary to choose what you want. And oh, by the way, sometimes in the thinking through the steps and sharing what you want with your accountability partner, you'll find out how stupid it was that that's what you thought it was. You might find that that's not really what it is or not, because we have to pull just an onion. You have to peel back the layers of an onion sometimes to truly get to the problem inside, to truly get to what I'm wanting. It's like, well, I want a new Range Rover, so I need to make this much more money. Really? Is that worth all of this stuff just for a car that's going to be worth half as much when you walk out? What's the real reason? What's the real reason? And so peeling that back, I think, is important. And your accountability partner is going to help you do that almost immediately. I can't tell you how many times I have had a brilliant idea, and my accountability partner is like, well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And you're like, and then you start talking about it, and it becomes, I'm laughing because trust me, it's happened. You gotta look at it and go, that was dumb. So I do think that the accountability partner is what is a critical part of growth. It's a critical part of succeeding in your goals. And I will tell you that anybody who says they can do it themselves is they're lying to themselves. They can't do it. So it's worth the time and effort.
It's a big piece of actually committing,
Oh,
it
it
sounds
is.
like.
It
Yeah.
really is. How do I commit if I'm going to let myself slide? And we will. We're human. Okay, we don't walk on water. We're going to
Hmm.
slide. It's rare. Okay, so I would say I've read a lot about him. It looks like Elon Musk is probably a pretty good accountability partner for himself because nobody could keep up with him. And so he would, but he is so rare. Okay, the Bill Kruses of the world, and I'm not a bad guy. The Bill Kruses of the world need somebody to say, "That sounds stupid. Can we talk? Can we try it again?" Or, "Okay, you said you'd do it. Why didn't you do it?" Don't give me the excuses. Tell me why you didn't do it. Remember, an excuse is a decision to do something you wanted to do over something you should have done. That's all it is. And so now what you have to check on is, and that's where accountability comes in, is did you really want to do what you said you wanted to do? And why not? And so I think that's part of that discussion. And honestly, it allows us to mature. And really, it allows us to take a refined focus. And that word professionalism. So I consider myself to be a professional. What does that mean? It means that at every corner, I'm trying to make myself a better version of who I am. Not compared to somebody else, a better version of who you are. And accountability partners help you do that.
Absolutely. Something you said at the end of our prep call for this really stuck with me. And it was something that someone said to you, but it was just tell yourself you've got this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you said if you just do that in your head, you'll have a lot higher chance of getting through it or doing the thing. Give me the context to that again. Who said that to you?
So my voice coach said that. And Carmen Hinsey is my voice coach. Of course, I talk for a living, which is funny because we actually had that conversation this morning. My daughter, Lauren, said, yeah, Dad only does one thing. He just talks. That's all he ever really does. So I talk for a living, and I lost my voice. And so I was, terrified a little bit of losing it again. So I hired a voice coach, and I sing, and I get a lot of enjoyment from singing. She says I'm a high tenor. It doesn't matter. I just love doing it. Am I good at it? No. It's Pavarotti. I'm not, right? But I get enjoyment from it. And so it made it worthwhile for a lot of different things. One, preserve what I do for a living. Two, allow me to have better tone when I do sing. And so she said, because sometimes, and I can't read music, but I know that if there's a note with a circle in it and it's above the line, the bars, it's above the line, one or two more bars all by itself, that looks high to me. Okay. And what would happen is I would psych myself out that it would be too high. And truly, she said, tell yourself you got this. This is in your range. We wouldn't be singing it if you didn't, but you've got it. And it's a lot like you've heard of pilots. So there's instrument rated and visual rated. So if you put on, because I've done this, if you're flying an airplane, and I've been flying an airplane before, visual, and you see everything around you, and they put the hood on, it's called the hood. You put it on you, and all you can see is the instruments, you will immediately put the plane in a dive. Immediately. It is very rare for people not to, because your senses have been shut off. And so even though the altimeter is telling you that you're doing it a spiral dive, your brain can't overwhelm the other senses. The most powerful thing in the world, the human mind, cannot overwhelm your senses. So if you convince yourself that you've got this is in my wheelhouse, I can do this, you'll hit it. You'll hit it, and it'll get easier. And I'll tell you that from a fact.
I love that. I think we all need to pocket that phrase as we move forward, especially thinking about moving into changes and things we haven't done before and hitting into new places for our businesses. That's just tell yourself you've got this.
Yeah, you got this. You got this.
Rather than the other voices that could be going, I feel like.
Well, yeah, well, they are happening, right? They're happening all around you. And they could be happening next to your next friend. Because remember, not everybody wants you to succeed. And I'm not telling you that people around you aren't good people. But when you become something new, the people around you recognize that you're no longer where you were, and they have to assess where they are. Does that make sense? So you have to be careful when you're sharing your wants, your desires, your goals. That's why your accountability partner is so important, that they have to be on the right page with you. And if you are in growth mode, they can't look at you and say, yeah, you shouldn't grow. You shouldn't try and get that dream. What they should say is, that's a tough one. Can you really get there? Are you ready for this? Because when you're looking at something, you say, I got this. Okay, that's you saying that. Your accountability partner's job is to challenge how you think you get it. So you have to, and that's why some people may tell you they may not want you to get this. because it puts themselves, not you. You're not putting them in that light. They'll put themselves in that light. So you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, that is important. I mean, and for your accountability partner and any of those around you, sometimes other people can have their egos in it too, and to just constantly be checking in on that.
Their own
And of course,
predispositions.
picking an accountability partner who doesn't really have the reason to have their own, skin in the game or thoughts about what needs to happen per se. And I loved what you did say about the spouses. And I think that transcends to teammates too. It's just, of course, always thinking about the emotions of others in some of the conversations that we might need to bring up, and thinking about the timing of that, right?
Yeah,
and how it'll impact them.
Absolutely.
So many words of wisdom, Bill, and this is really fun. And I can't wait for your book to come out. And so many different, especially through the book you shared, and let's just close with that, like the different phases of transition. In the book, you're talking about, maternity leave and paternity leave are transition, because it's preparing to have a comfortable and present escape from the business for a period of time to do something really important in the grand scheme of our lives. And, so I love that you included that. And then, of course, selling your business, retiring. But what other examples of transition did you name in the book? Remind me.
Well, I think that the best thing to think about is that transition, remember, is the result of accepting that change is happening, identifying a change that's impacting you, and deciding to change. Now it's really hard to find some part of life that isn't transitional, right? It's not just the business. You're in midstream. You've been doing it 20 years and you're seeing, AI come into your business. How do I impact it? It could be, I've been doing it 40 years and it's time for me to move into the next one. Should I have been thinking about it 10 years before, right? All those things. I think that's the important thing. Change happens around us every day. We have choices to make, and God gave us free will to make those choices. Our choice is which part of change do we need to address, and which part of it do we not need to address? Because there is so much going on. If we try to address too many different change, we're going to accomplish nothing. So we have to think through it. That's the homework part of it. But there's just so many different aspects to what change is and why transition is so important. Once you get the muscle memory of reacting positively and forward, not regression, then all change is fun.
Thank you.
I think that's the best route.
And that's the great, mic drop. May all change be fun, especially going into the new year for folks when they listen to this. This is a great way to conclude. Bill, thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom and encouraging us to embrace change, make it fun, and include others in the journey. That's awesome.
Thank you, Catherine. And good luck on your own journey. We're all doing it.
Thank you. Likewise. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Expanders Podcast, presented by The Skinny Platform. You can catch more episodes and be notified of newly released episodes by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or subscribing on YouTube. For more information on the Expanders Podcast and The Skinny Platform, visit our website, www.theskinnyplatform.com.